Okay.
Hello and welcome to Learning Space. My name
Yay.
is Dr. Pamela Gay, and I have with me tonight one of my favorite human beings, Amy Davis Roth. She is an artist that did a series of paintings with fluid flow painting techniques that inspired me to do my own artsy endeavors. But more importantly, she did a series of paintings where she partnered with scientists to explain the science through art. And oh my God, you've done so much more than that. Please, Amy Surley, tell folks about yourself and all the amazing things that you create.
Well, first of all, I think I'm your art sensei, which means at one point I'm just going to sneak up behind you with a paintbrush and you're going to have to react. So I'm going
Okay.
to be really looking forward to that. But I did teach you how to do a paint pouring technique. You
Yes.
took my class, and it's a really fun combination of art and science. And I love teaching this class. I was teaching it to sort of a cannabis friendly audience, but I am now opening it up to everyone. And I'm going to start teaching it, to children even, because I did some private classes with teenagers and some younger kids and they loved it. And I think the reason that they loved it is because it's a very trendy painting technique that you see all over Pinterest. You
Yeah.
see it, yeah, you see it on YouTube. There's a lot of demos showing you how to make these incredible cells.
Yeah.
But what people don't realize about the paint pouring technique is that it was actually invented, or more like discovered, in the 1930s by a Mexican muralist painter by the name of David Alfaro Siqueiros. And he poured some paint onto his floor, and as he was working on a mural, it wasn't intentional at all, and that's why it was originally called accidental painting. So he poured this paint onto the floor, and when it dried in this amazingly detailed way. It had all of these cells that had popped up, and like some of the colors mixed, but some of the colors didn't. And he was fascinated by this, and he wrote these incredible letters to the girlfriend that he had at the time
Uh huh.
about how he wanted to find out what was happening, and he wanted scientists to help him figure this out. So he reached out to some scientists, and they're like, what is the deal with this kooky artist? Why does he even want to talk to us? And sadly, nobody helped him figure out what was happening.
Oh
And it wasn't
no.
until after his death, and his girlfriend outlived him, and she got involved in the sciences, and they did some tests. So what they did is they got like a piece of plexiglass and they laid it
Hmm.
down, and they poured different paints onto this plexiglass so they
Oh,
could see what
cool.
was happening. And what they realized was that it was basic fluid dynamics.
Yeah.
Yeah, so pigments, which make up paint, are made up of different materials. And these different materials have different weights, they have different densities. So if there's yellow, for example, sometimes that's used, or a flower is used to create that. Mars black usually has metal in it. Titanium white usually has metal in it.
Yes.
So those pigments are heavier. So if you put all of your pigments on equal footing, they will interact with each other, much like galaxies do, much like universes do, much in the same way that matter is attracted together to create planets. It's the same sort of thing that's happening when you're doing this paint pouring technique. And it's one of the happy, sad sort of things about paint pouring, because it's very popular right now and you see it all over, but very few people realize that what's actually happening when you're doing that is basic science. It's basic fluid dynamics, and it's fascinating. And that's why I really want to open the class up, to all ages, because I think that it's great to teach the kids a little bit about that. What you're doing on the canvas when you're pouring these paints together, by not mixing them, by letting them interact with each other, you're actually allowing little tiny galaxies to form. And I think it really can open your eyes as to what's happening, in space and around you. So yeah,
And
I taught you that, but you
yes.
could actually probably teach me a thing or two about how galaxies are actually formed.
Well, and mostly, I mean, to be honest, I started figuring out how to muck with the ratios. I'm trying to pull up one of your paintings now, and the internet is
Oh,
disliking
okay.
me.
I have
You can
some.
just like hold one up, probably.
Yeah, okay, so this right here, can you see this? That I
Yeah,
painted over the top of it, but you can see those cells that are in there. That's what we're
yeah.
sort of talking about, where I've used reds and metallic paints. And so the colors, some of them will sink down, but you can see like this red dot right here, that rose to the surface. And that's because all the colors were put in an equal footing. They're all in the same medium, and so they could interact with each other. And then what I do is I paint over the top of them. And I have another one that I'm calling galaxy flowers because it sort of, to me, they look like little galaxies. Yeah, I do a lot of birds. I grew up in San Juan Capistrano, which is a city in Southern California, and it's where the swallows fly home to the mission every year. And so I love having birds as a motif in some of my work. But yeah, I do a ton of art, more than just the paint pouring, but I really do enjoy teaching that. Here's another one that has a telescope. So the other thing I've been doing is I do the paint pouring in the background, and then I do some sort of painting over the top. This is gold leafing. It's a gold leaf telescope, and then I've resin coated the whole entire
And
thing.
you are magic in how you resin coat. I have not figured out how to do that yet.
Oh, I can teach you. It's so easy.
Okay.
The best thing to do is to art resin. I sort of sound like an advertiser for them, which bothers me. It's also 1,000 degrees in my office right now, just so you know. So I apologize if I'm bright pink and sweating, but it's very hot. I live in the San Fernando Valley now, and it's very warm here. But art resin is the best product for art because
Okay.
it's literally the name of it. The name of the brand is art resin. It's not like I'm trying to be cool or something. It's literally called art resin. And the reason why it works so well is that it has 2 different UV protectors in it. So most
Okay.
resins that you use will yellow over time. And
Right.
their product is specifically designed. They don't guarantee that it won't ever yellow, but they say, it's the best on the market. And so far, they've put it in the bright sun in Texas for 6 years, and it hasn't yellowed. So that's a
Oh,
pretty good
wow.
test to see. Yeah, and so that's the resin that I use, and then I mix makeup grade glitter into it to make it even more shiny. I have
That's
Yeah, I have a finish fetish is what they called it. There was an art movement in Los Angeles in the 80s, finish fetish, where everything was glossy and shiny
yeah,
like a
yeah.
brand new car. Yeah, I really love to do that. So I try to make my stuff even shinier. So it's hard to photograph is the only
Right.
bummer, but it's like it looks like
It's
glass.
gorgeous.
Yeah.
And thank you everyone for all of the follows coming in out there.
Oh,
Hi. Now
here's one of the fruit fly. I go to a neuroscience conference every year. Well, not every year. I should say I went last year and I was lucky enough to get invited back. And I'm so honored to be there, the Society for Neuroscience. And so I do a lot of paintings about neuroscience. And
right.
that's how I got invited. But last year, a lot of the scientists were talking about how they do a lot of their research on fruit flies. And so I promised them that I would come this year with some fruit fly paintings. So this is one of them that I'm working on.
Now, with the whole series that you did of paintings based on, and
Here's one of
yeah,
them. Yeah.
yeah.
So
So
this one was, well, what I wanted to do when I first started my Patreon, I really wanted to have a lot of peer reviewed work because I love to
mhm,
do science based art, but I'm not a scientist. I don't have a background in science, but I
right.
have a lot of wonderful, brilliant friends like you, Pamela.
Thank you.
And so I would reach out to these genius friends of mine and ask them for advice. So I know chemists, and that's how I did this big painting on capsaicin, which is the chemical this is just a pendant of it.
Yeah.
I'm giving these pendants away on my Patreon right now, by the way. But this is a tiny little version of this big painting that I did, and I did it with the help of Rachel Burks, who's a chemist, and she explained to me the chemical properties of capsaicin and what makes a pepper hot, and explained it in all the detail and fact checked me. So I would come up with an idea like, I love peppers. I love to grow peppers. I
Right.
love to paint peppers. But how can I dig a little bit deeper? Which is sort of, I think, what's great about science and art partnering up is that a lot of us artists are really fascinated by things that we see, but there's always something more just underneath the surface. And
Right.
that's where science comes in. And if we're not, I'm not educated in the sciences. So to make sure that I was getting my images and the information, because I like to put little like factual details on things,
Yes.
making sure that I get that accurate, I would have it fact checked. So I was getting my work, what I like to say was peer reviewed by my community. But it was really they were not necessarily my peers. It was more like I was having my work checked by scientists. But I still do that a lot whenever I do any science based work. This piece is a print of a huge painting that I did. It was on the New Horizons. It was when that spacecraft was headed out for the first time to fly by Pluto. And so I did this painting before there were actually any photos of Pluto, before I had
Yeah.
come in, and I was pretty proud of myself. It doesn't have the heart on there, but I
You did a
guessed.
good
And
guess.
yeah, it was a good guess. And so I had little facts about the moon and the spacecraft itself, and I had all that stuff fact checked by a scientist. Or in this case,
And and you've you've done everything from equations on necklaces
oh yeah, yeah.
to a series on why a rose smells like a rose.
Yeah, so they have that saying that every rose smells as sweet, and that's not true at all. That's
No.
another project I did with Ray Burks, the chemist. Yeah, it turns out that some flowers don't smell at all, and some do smell sweeter than other ones, and it depends on what kind of aroma chemicals are in them and how active those chemicals are. So that was a really fun project. I get so incredibly inspired. I'm kind of a manic person. That's just my
Yeah.
personality. And so I'm constantly like finding this next shiny object that I want to get interested in. And it's so helpful for me to have this wonderful community of scientists and science communicators to reach out to. I got so obsessed with it that I made an entire coloring book about
Yes.
robots, and it was based on
And that's
based
on
on molecular
Amazon, isn't
chemistry.
it?
Yeah, you can buy it on Amazon. I think I've sold like three
I
copies of it, to be honest with you. But
that
it's really
so
cute. It's called the Feel Good Bar and Grill, and it's all about chemistry, and it's about a robot named Lena that moves to the moon in Enceladus and opens up a bar and grill. And so I invented all these different robots and had all kinds of different chemical information, little bits of science in there, so you can teach people about dopamine and different neurotransmitters in the brain and all kinds of really fun little things like that. So there's all these different. There's
and
another thing on
that's
pepper.
and you describe everything out. And so like there's another one on coffee, which I of course own
Oh
at
yeah,
least
there's
3 different
coffee bot.
versions of.
The coffee bot. Yeah, here's coffee bot. If you guys can see that. So it has the chemical of coffee in it. What does it say? Yep. It's all about them being on the moon in solids and how people and robots take their coffee very seriously. And it explains the difference between the different chemicals and what makes coffee bitter. And it explains all of that in there. It's is fun. This was so much fun to do, and I hope to do another project like this again sometime. Sarin toaster, where you get enough serotonin on a piece of toast to make you feel good before you have to leave the moon and go back to whatever galaxy you were from. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
So at the beginning of this, I started to say that you're an artist that works with science, and you stopped me. But
Well,
all that's come out of your mouth for this
I
last
know.
few moments.
I know.
So
I do.
so
I do listen. I do science and nature, and I bounce around a lot. I am one of those people who I've made a commitment in my life to be an artist, and I may not be the most successful artist that ever walked the earth, but I made a promise to myself to make art every day. I sort of came to this conclusion about, I don't know, 10 years ago, that I was going to make art every single day. And
yeah.
so I do. And so I hate to say that like I'm a science-based artist, because I do so much art. I do a lot of nature inspired work,
Yes.
but again, I'm
Nature
so
is
it's
science
science. I
too.
know. Okay, so that's what I always keep coming back to, right? So here's one of my favorite pieces. It says science is everywhere, if you can see
Yeah.
that. It's a telescope and a microscope, and there's bacteria in it, and there's little planets and nebulas and stuff. And I honestly believe that everywhere you look, there is a bit of science. And if
It's
there's
true.
anything in the world that you're interested in, it could be anything. It could be chocolate. You could learn about theobromine if you're interested in chocolate. That's the chemical in it. There's so many things out there, and anything. A butterfly, what's the difference between a butterfly and a moth? What is going on with that flower out in the garden? What chemicals are in that plant? How can the pharmaceutical industry use it to make medicine? There's so many fascinating things just under the surface of everything that you love in nature, and that's where science comes in. And I'm so grateful to know scientists and to have people to reach out to. I'm doing that, like I said, that neuroscience event. So right now I'm working on a bunch of different neurons, This is a multipolar neuron that says thinking of you. I've turned it into a greeting card because I always like to make little products out of things. And the other thing that art and science sort of have in common is that they both have a love for the new, right? Like
Yes.
there's always something just around the corner that hasn't been discovered yet, but
Right.
could be discovered at any moment. And that's
Yes.
what makes it so exciting to be, interested in astronomy or interested in neuroscience. And I am using neuroscience as an example again right now because that's the project that I'm working on currently to get ready for the Society for Neuroscience event. But a new neuron was just discovered like 4 days ago, and it's called the Rosehip neuron. Let me grab this real quick.
Okay. It was discussed.
So I know it's big, right? Did I flash you guys? I'm sorry.
No,
Oh, no.
I'm laughing because it was discovered 4 days ago and you already painted it.
So I'm already, well, the painting's not done yet, but I have started it. So the Rosehip neuron, this is such a big painting. I guess maybe if I stood back. The reason it's called that is because it looks like a fertilized rose when the petals fall off. So that's how you can tell a rose is fertilized, and it's often used for tea and stuff like that. It's sort of this little bulb, and when the petals fall off, it looks like this. And so this neuron is a very bushy neuron. It's unlike most neurons, which sort of have, these dendrites, which are longer, that like sort of reach out to other neurons. This is an inhibitory neuron. And the reason why it's so special and that neuroscientists are very excited about this right now is that it hasn't been found in mouse brains. And so mouse brains are often used to model medication and things for humans, but they don't often work on humans. So they'll do a study and it'll be very effective on a mouse, and they'll be like, all right, because it's been long thought that the mouse brain or the human brain is just a scaled up mouse brain.
Yeah.
But what they're finding with this discovery is that that's not necessarily true, because these neurons do not exist in the mouse. They may exist in primates and other creatures that we haven't, looked into yet. But it's a very exciting discovery, and it's an inhibitory neuron. So it's the kind of neuron that stops information. There's neurons that like send information, say go, 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 and then there's neurons in your brain that say, okay, stop that. So that you stay in control, or bodily functions stay in control, or what have you.
Yeah.
And so, the Rosehip neuron, latest discovery, and that's what makes it so exciting, right? Like I'm never, ever for my life going to run out of material as long as science is there by my side. And that's why I love it so much.
And this is how we met. I still remember the moment we met. It was in Pasadena. I was doing an Astronomy Cast booth in preparation for the International Year of Astronomy. Yeah. And you'd written Fraser and I about doing something with your necklaces and our podcast, and we were all like, we do not know who this person is.
Oh my God, are you kidding? I fangirled out. So my husband, we're total fans of you, and we heard you're going to be in LA, and we're like, let's go. So we went, and we're like, what do we do? What do we say to Pamela?
And you gave me a necklace that says science. Yeah. And I still have it, and I would be wearing it if I had two functional arms. And for those of you who don't know, this arm that isn't moving is not moving.
Yeah, me and Pamela are a mess right now. I have repetitive stress injuries in both of my wrists because I've made 18,000 of those necklaces by hand. Yeah. I didn't realize that, I thought like that only happens if you are like a typist or, you did. But making art, I guess I made too many necklaces. So I by hand have made over 18,000 necklaces.
In 10 years.
Yeah, in about 11 years,
Okay.
So they look sort of like that. And they say different things. That a lot of them are science-based. Some of them are nature-based. You can check them out at surly.etsy.com. There's a whole science section. But we're both like this now.
Yeah.
But I'm not giving up.
I
have to paint with my feet, Pamela. I'm going to keep it up.
I'm planning to paint this weekend. I just right now can't move this arm. This arm can like flail, Muppet flail. I have a one-armed Muppet flail going. Now, you're actually a tremendous inspiration to me. So we can like inspire each other back and forth because you got this idea of, I want a facts-based reality. Mm-hmm. I want to do art because I love this and this will be my life.
Yeah.
And you've had a shed of obstacles come up over us,
Sure.
and you've turned them into art.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Oh, yeah. So about 4 years ago, I did an art project called A Woman's Room Online, and you can Google it. It's still out there
yeah,
in cyberspace. And what it was actually was I was getting targeted by online harassers. And this was before Trump and before Nazis came back and before Gamergate. Prior to that, there was the situation where there was a whole bunch of anti-feminists, and they're all the same people
yeah,
because I watched the exact same people that were targeting, women online back, way back in the day,
right.
turn into the same exact people that were the Gamergate people, and now those people are the alt-right and the Nazis. It's all the same
Yeah,
group of people. But I had been targeted along with some other prominent women in the community, and so what I decided to do with that, because yeah, if you're given all this information and you're an artist, you have to do something with it. It's sort of like
yeah,
it's just a need to do something. So I took all of the hate mail and all the hate emails and the terrible messages and my face photoshopped on other people's bodies and all of this stuff, and I did an art exhibit where I had help from friends. Some wonderful people helped
yeah,
me do this, but we built an actual office and we called it A Woman's Room Online, so that people that were unfamiliar, because back then when it was happening, people weren't really familiar with the level of targeted harassment that you would get on
right.
Twitter and these other social media platforms. And so I wanted to create an interactive experience for people that weren't familiar with it. So you walk into this room and everything in the room is covered with hate messages. I mean, there was a fake cat in the room that we made out of
Yeah,
hate messages. There was a
yeah,
computer screen that would churn out the hate messages. And it was supposed to be an educational thing, to sort of enlighten people onto what was happening. I hope that it did in a small sense. I mean, unfortunately, it certainly did not stem the tide of what would later happen to other women
right.
online, and it's still happening to people today. But yeah, if you give me something negative, I will find a way to turn it into art. I don't care if it's negative, if it's positive, I will find a way to turn it into something, to hopefully make the world a little bit more beautiful, or at least a little bit more educated, or something along those lines. I want to have a dialogue, a continual dialogue with the world around me, and I choose to use images and objects to do that. So yeah.
And what amazes me is just the diversity of styles that you bring to it, while everything you do is clearly you. So I'm about to bring up your Day of the Dead robot stickers
Okay.
that
Oh
say
yeah.
name doob species.
Yeah, that's from the Feel Good Bar and Grill coloring book. Yeah, so that's one of the robots that works at the bar and grill, and it's basically a condolence bot. So the idea behind it was that
Didn't know that part.
no matter who passed away, like, you're traveling in a spaceship, and you're leaving the galaxy, and
Right.
left behind family. Time is an issue. That time may not change for you, but by the time you get back, your dog's not going to be there anymore. Neither is your mom, or you're going to lose someone. We all lose somebody. So the purpose of this robot at the bar and grill, because the purpose of the bar and grill is to make people feel better,
Uh
is that
huh.
this robot will come up to the table and you can enter into it, the date of birth and the species, and the robot will produce a non-offensive condolence message. And it's what it's made out of is like a cooler, and inside this will open up its chest and it'll pull out an appropriate flower and present it to you. And that's the sole purpose of condolence bot. And then he just moves along to the next person and asks if there's anyone they would like to remember. It's just one of those, something it's just sort of my MO. Like, something, you present me with something terrible, I'm going to find a way to somehow try to make sense of that information in a way that's easier for all of us to digest. And Condolence Bot just wants to do the same thing.
And
Yeah.
and this is a truly powerful message that we all really need right now in this universe. Lord only knows.
Yeah. Seriously. I'm trying to find Condolence Bot in my book. I don't know what page he's. Oh, wait, there he is. So there's an uncolored version, but yeah, I have a Patreon page, patreon.com/surlyamy, where I make art and I post there every day. I do about 4 different paintings a month, but I post daily on my lens feed, like just behind the scenes stuff that I'm doing. And I also make
Yeah.
stickers for my patrons that I give away. And so I did this illustration for the coloring book of Condolence Bot, but then I colored it in and I made stickers that I then gave out to my patrons. And you can get it in my Etsy shop too, but if you're one of my patrons, you get stickers for free. So yeah, that's good old Condolence Bot. Can you see
And
it? I don't know if you
yes, we can. And I had the color version. I'm trying. So I'm trying very hard right now to log into Patreon so I can get rid of the banner at the top that says "Thou
Oh,
shalt log in."
okay,
And
yeah.
I'm getting hit with a verify this device, but don't recognize this device. So I'm
Oh.
sorry, audience, that I am
Yeah, if
struggling.
you go to patreon.com/surlyamy, I make a lot of the posts public after 3 days. So
Yeah.
patrons get a first look, and then after 3 days, the posts go public. So you can see a lot of what's going on my Patreon page
You
without paying anything if you want to go check it out.
you have totally mastered the art of Patreon. I am trying to figure out the art of
I
Patreon.
wish I had. It's hard. It's so hard to get patrons. Like you ask for such a small amount of money, but it's weird. It's really difficult unless you're really popular to get people to pledge and like, what, like give me less than what a cup of coffee would cost and I will be your friend forever and you get to talk to me privately and everything. So I do love Patreon. I appreciate what you're saying, but I don't feel like I've mastered it at all. Every day, like, how do I get people to care about this? I don't know. So here's another poster I did with a bacteriophage where
Yes,
he's momentarily experiencing guilt.
before he kills something.
Yeah, because if you don't know, a bacteriophage is a bacteria acts like a virus, and it needs a cell in order to like survive and multiply. So this one's just feeling a little bit bad about it for just 1 second.
Now, the thing I was trying to find on your Patreon, and I'm realizing you probably have a printed copy right there that you can
I
find
might.
faster, is you did an amazing moonrise with the craters on it.
Okay, so that painting is amazing, but it's like 6 feet. It's like bigger than this office. It's in my living room. And oh my gosh, I love that painting so much. I feel like that painting doesn't really get truly appreciated because I have a tiny house and it's like right by the front door and nobody but me stares at it. But it's this huge and it's like super black. But
Yeah.
as you get closer to it, you realize that you're looking at the earth from the vantage point of the moon and it's so incredibly moving because it's such a dark painting.
And you got it to scale.
Yeah, I did. I worked really hard to make sure that it was to scale. So the moon, if you're at the moon, it's like you only see a tiny part of the moon at the bottom of the
Yeah.
piece, and it would be as if you were standing on it looking at the earth, and it really sort of puts everything into perspective. It's that whole tiny blue dot thing, like Carl Sagan said. We are so unimportant really in the grand scheme of things. We are just a tiny blue dot and that's our home and we need to take better care of it. And yeah, I love that painting so much. It took a really long time because I hand painted like all these dots to make
Yeah.
it look like there were so many stars. I wish I could show an example of it, but I don't have a print of it with me. But if you do dig through my Patreon, it's probably there. And what I'll do actually tomorrow is I will put up a post of it again, just as a
Okay.
reminder for people that haven't seen it, so that if anybody new signs up or comes by to check me out, I'll put a picture of it up.
Perfect.
It's lovely.
Now, so we've jumped from bacteriophages, which are biology, and
It's DNA.
DNA. So where
This
do
one
you?
was great. I screwed this one up big time when I first drew it. So that scientists really helped me out a lot with this. Like DNA is supposed to rotate left. I didn't know that. I had it rotating the wrong way. I also had no idea what base pairs were. Did not understand that concept at all. I'm like, yeah, I'm just gonna make it a rainbow. So I made like all these colors, and I had the nicest people. They're like, honey, I think that if you want it to be accurate, there can only be 4 colors, and the 2 colors need to pair up each time, and that's why they're base pairs. I'm like, oh, but it makes the art better, right? So I
Yes,
know
it
that
really
now, right?
does.
And I learned
Yes.
something. Yeah. So
Yes. No, in the world, there are humans upon humans upon humans who somehow manage to not encounter science.
I don't understand that. How can
So,
you not? Maybe
how
they just don't realize it. Maybe they don't know that they're encountering science every time they check their email on their cell phone. Okay.
exactly? Now,
Because
now,
science is everywhere.
how is it that you're finding all these different things that bring you inspiration on a daily basis?
How can you not? I mean, again, maybe it's my manic personality.
Bacteriophage. This is
Well, you start thinking about stuff like that, you start thinking about what's around you, and if you look closer, what's there. And oh, and bacteria are so elegant, right? That's
yeah,
another thing that I love about science and art. Both are in love with elegant forms, right? And there's so many in science that are just under the surface. I thought I had brought out like radiolaria as an example. I don't know if I brought that painting in here or not, but there's like all these perfectly beautiful tiny like circular shapes of things. Oh, here we go. So this is what radiolaria looks like, but it's also what
oh
a virus
wow,
looks like. Okay, and I did this with gold leafing. So I did that paint pouring technique that I taught you, and then
yeah,
over the top of that I painted it could be considered radiolaria, or it could be a virus, or it could be plankton. There's all these similar shapes that you find
structures.
in nature, yeah, that are
It's like the
elegant,
grand
right?
design spiral, the
Yeah,
Fibonacci series.
exactly. So
Yeah,
there's all these gorgeous, like perfect circles and perfect shapes and spirals that exist out there. And if you're at all interested and you're an artist and you're painting these things, you have to start in your mind. It takes you hours to do one of these. Start asking questions, right? I mean, who doesn't ask questions? I don't understand people that don't ask questions naturally. So I would want to draw something like this, or I started drawing the bacteria, which are just these really cool sort of, like oblong shapes and
right.
circles. And I don't know if I have any bacteria. Oh, here we go. So this is your basic bacteria shapes. So I got interested in that originally, and then I found out about bacteriophage, which look like little monsters, right? They're
Yes,
like hanging out with these guys
yes.
that are just like sort of cruising around, but the bacteriophage look like robotic monsters. So of course I'm going to be fascinated by that while I'm googling bacteria shapes, right? And so of course I had to draw that. I had to draw bacteriophage, but that's basically the simple explanation of how my mind bounces from one thing to another. I find anything that I think is pretty, and I start learning about it, and I research it, and then I stumble upon scientists that know more about it because I'm good at Googling,
And
like
extroverted, you're also that.
yeah, okay, guilty. So yeah, I'm not afraid to reach out to people and ask them questions, and to, find accurate information. And there's always another rabbit hole just around the corner that you can dive into. And then another thing that gets me going is I love to do custom orders for people, especially
Right.
with the Surly Ramics jewelry.
Yeah.
And so I have a lot of people that reach out to me with very strange or not so strange, questions like, can you make this? Requests, I should say. Right now, I have a wonderful request from someone that wants me to uh, do like a rainbow cerebrum to represent neurodiversity, because
Oh,
I
that's
guess
cool.
there's not an official symbol for
Yeah.
neurodiversity, and he wants to get a set of necklaces for his wife and daughter, and I think
Hmm.
that's so super cool. So he asked me if I would design things. So that's what I'm going to do, over the weekend, is I'm going to draw us, parts of the brain and
Right.
see what I can do to, make it original. I've seen other people doing rainbow brains before, so I want to try to come up with something a little bit different. But that's what I'll be doing. I'll be checking to see if I'm drawing the brain accurately, checking to make sure that I'm doing the correct part of the brain, because what do I know? So I have to do research, and I'll have to ask somebody to make sure I'm not screwing it up. But that's a perfect example
Yeah.
of how I fall down another rabbit hole, because I love that request. That's a great project for me. It's something I can post on Patreon later. I can hopefully learn something about it that I can then share with my patrons. Science is everywhere,
And a badly drawn brain becomes intestines, so don't do that.
or a toilet seat.
Oh.
Yeah, I drew a brain once, and it looked like a toilet seat. I put it on a necklace, and someone told me that it looks like a toilet seat. I'm like, you're right. And you know what else can look like a toilet seat if you don't draw it right? Is a
What?
radio telescope.
Oh,
Radio
yeah, yeah.
telescope from the wrong angle will, if you don't do the shading, it will look just like a toilet seat. So yeah,
That's
some of my
awesome.
art is not beautiful.
Now, have you ever started when you're doing some of this? Um, like right now, I'm just drinking in, all of these bits of science I don't know because you've gone down the rabbit holes and I have not yet gone down the rabbit holes. And what I really enjoy about this nerdy society that you and I get to share so often
Yeah.
is that we spend so much time celebrating. Oh my gosh, you know this thing I don't know. Teach me
Yep.
that thing and
Yeah.
I'll teach and I can't use both arms. Sorry.
I understand, girl. I got you. I understand.
And
I can't clap. I learned today that because my wrists are messed up, like I can use my fingers,
oh
but I
yeah.
can't do things like
You
clap.
have to do the beatnik thing.
There is an invasive mosquito, a newly
Oh
evolved invasive
no.
mosquito in Los Angeles. So we used to laugh at all the people from the South because in LA it's like too hot. There's no mosquitoes,
Yeah.
there's no like murky water. Well, there's this new like Asian striped mosquito and it doesn't buzz. You know how a regular mosquito buzzes, so you sort of have a warning that you
Yeah.
know there's one
Yeah.
around. This one doesn't. And so I saw one today and I tried to slap it, but it didn't work out for me. So the mosquitoes have evolved past the humans at this point, at least in Los Angeles. So look
Oh,
out.
oh dear. Oh
I might have
dear.
to paint. I might have to paint it. It may be my last painting, as I'm covered in itchy red bumps. But it's a beautiful mosquito. It really is. It's got these really cool stripes, and it's like black and white.
Oh, I know the one
It's
you're
really
talking
cool.
about. Yes, yes. It is
Yeah,
very pretty and then needs to die.
yeah,
Now,
yeah.
one of the things I love about this nerdy society that we share is this sharing of, oh my God, you know this thing, teach me the thing, and I'll teach you my thing, and we'll share the things. Do you ever, as you go out in the world, come across people who are like, you're an artist. What do you know? How do I know your equations are correct? And
Yeah, all the time.
and on the other side of that, do you ever just want to like shake other artists who are like, oh, why should I try and get my science right? Science is hard.
I mean, to be perfectly honest, I block out negativity so well at this
Or
point
turn
in
it
my
into
life.
art.
Yeah, or just turn it into art. And I, more often than not, like I will, for this last weekend, for example, I did an art walk in Oceanside, California, which is a very white, very touristy, very, sort of like, I don't know,
Yeah.
very conservative kind of crowd. I didn't really bring much science stuff with me at all. I brought a lot of ocean waves and my bird paintings, and I did bring a few neurons. And I was so pleasantly
You took
surprised.
more than a few, but most of them were in your head.
Okay, good point. But I brought some paintings that I'm starting for the neuroscience event, and I had them, so I was like, I'll bring some. And I was pleasantly surprised that at least 3 people got so incredibly excited. They're like, is that like they weren't sure that I knew that it was a neuron, but
Yeah,
obviously, I mean,
yeah.
I had painted it, and they were so excited to see science depicted in art that I experienced that 10 times more often than I ever experience anybody like, why should I do the science thing? I think artists are more often than not a lot more intelligent than we give them credit for. I think there's a stereotype out there that you have to be a hippie. And while I do love a lot of the hippie lifestyle things, I'm not putting any of it down. I love it. But there's a stereotype that you're supposed to be kind of spacey and out there and like wasted all the time
Well,
in order
that
to create
describes
good
Carl
art.
Sagan from what I understand. So,
Yeah, he would have been so much fun to hang out with. So much fun. He is a great guy. But yeah, more often than not, I get a positive reaction. And I know a lot of science-based artists, if you're interested, if you're out there, search the Sci Art hashtag on Twitter, or even on Etsy now. It's kind of gone
yes.
mainstream. At first, it was just sort of a small group of us that were promoting it. But now if you Google that, if you search, hashtag SCIART, Sci Art, you'll find so many science-based artists out there. There's a huge community and it's growing, and that's really great to see. And yeah, it's more positive than negative, definitely.
That warms my heart.
Yeah. People want to learn. I mean, I know it feels like there's this huge divide in our society right now where, you're conservative and
Yeah.
therefore, you don't want to learn the science. And then over here, you got the liberals and, oh, yay, science is so great. Global warming, understand it, But I think that really at the heart of it, people are very similar and they want to learn. I just
Yeah.
think that, negative things happen in people's lives where they put up these roadblocks. And I think artists are in a perfect position to help sort of tear down some of that wall that's been built up, because we can sort of sneak in the science without them
Yes.
realizing it.
Yes.
We just
Now,
got images without words. We're like, here's this picture, take your time, look
right.
deeply into it. What do you see? And then we can incorporate some information.
Now, with all the stuff that you learn, and like I have your trilobites up on my screen.
Oh,
Let me
yeah.
see if I can get a big picture of that. Your trilobites are one of my favorites.
Is it a painting or a necklace?
I
What is it? I've done
I
a lot of
think
trilobites.
this is the poster art that I'm about to show
Okay.
everyone. Um, so you did trilobites,
I don't even
which
remember, but I know I did. Yes.
it's my personal favorite extremophile because I'm the kind of nerd that has my own favorite extremophile.
Okay. All right. Oh,
And
here's the peppers. I found the peppers.
yes, my favorite is
There's
the peppers.
the big pepper one.
So
It's actually a painting. Yeah.
that's my favorite of your science paintings, and trilobites are my favorite extremophiles. So you're just like walking all over my favorite things.
Yeah. Yeah, trilobites are great. Trilobites are great. I actually have a real one that I keep in the bathtub with me. It sounds weird, but he hangs out. He's my bath buddy.
Whoa. Hold on, we're having a screen insurrection. There we go. The screen did weird things for a moment. It is fixed now. Um, so when we were kids, there was
Yeah.
always that one kid that wouldn't touch the page that had the tarantula on it because
Oh,
it was.
I love them.
Have you, in going down any of these rabbit holes, found any corner of science that was like retreat, retreat, retreat?
I used to be terrified of spiders too. That's really interesting that you bring that up. I was really, really, really scared of spiders. And I think that because of the personality that I have and because of being interested in science and wanting to get up close
Yeah.
with things, especially nature related, for the first time in my life, I ended up with a yard. You've been to my house and I
Yes.
love gardening. And so when that happened in my life, I got a macro lens on my camera and I started taking pictures of tiny things, and spiders were one of those things that I used to be so scared of. And I decided, you know what? I'm going to learn. I'm going to learn about these guys. And the more that you learn about them, the less scary they become and the cuter they get. It's a really weird phenomenon. And I know there's people out there that are like, nah, not going to happen. I'm scared of spiders. But really, they are so freaking cute up close. And
Yes.
some of them have like little mustaches and they're like
And they'll
fuzzy.
wave your front arms at
And
you
yeah,
occasionally.
and they'll do cute little things. There's all these weird things happening in the San Fernando Valley where I live. We also have an invasive brown widow spider.
Ew.
So yeah, it sounds terrifying at first, but the black widow is actually being driven out by this brown widow, which looks identical to the black widow except for the fact that it's brown and it's
Yeah.
also larger and it's also less scared of humans. It
Those
has
are
been
all.
It sounds like a bad thing, but the good news is that the brown widow, while poisonous, is much less deadly than the bite from the black widow. So the brown
Okay.
widow's taking over and sort of driving the black widow out of the area, and there's all these brown widows now, and they're my buddies, dude. I love them. Like, they are so cute to me. They're like so fat, and they've got these like red triangles, and they're so pretty, and yeah, I just love them. So I guess, long story short, no, I haven't found anything yet that has like freaked me out enough to recoil in horror. I have even painted Trump at one point, and
Yeah.
that's probably the scariest thing that I know. So yeah, nothing like that.
Now, with space exploration, we do a lot of work where we have artists in resident.
Mhm.
There are folks like Danielle DePaula that she takes images and bounces them off the moon to see how the loss of signal changes the
Ooh,
photographs.
cool.
If you could go anywhere, do anything, what do you think you'd want to do?
Wow, that's a really good question. I think that I would be well, I love looking out into space. And my two favorite sciences are definitely astronomy and neuroscience.
Yeah.
I absolutely love both of those. And I guess they're sort of opposites, really. So I don't really know how I would make a decision, but I love looking under electron microscopes. I love looking out into space. I guess I mean, can't I pick both? I mean, I really want both. I would love to
So it
render
sounds like what you
planets for
want
people.
is infinite imaging capabilities.
Yeah. Well, not even so much that, but like whatever the unknown is that you
Yeah.
sort of have data around. I think I would love to be that girl that you come to and say, hey, we've got this information about this planet. This is what the atmosphere is like. This is what we think the surface is like. Here's an example of how we think the texture is. We think that the colors, are sort of going to be like this. Can you render that for us in an artistic way? Just like I did with that Pluto painting. I
Yeah.
loved doing that painting so much because I got to imagine what I thought the planet was going to look like before the spacecraft actually got there. And for me, that was so much fun. It was science, but it was also imagination. So I
Right.
love those kind of projects. I love, the idea of, this new neuron, like I explained earlier, the rosehip neuron, like we don't really know for sure what it does yet, but I get to think about that while I'm putting it down on canvas. And maybe, just maybe, I'm going to inspire the next scientist who sees that painting, to come up with a discovery. Maybe she's working on some project that has to do with inhibitory neurons, and maybe I will depict it in some way by accident that is going to inspire her in her
Yeah.
research, and that's going to change the world. Like, that's the fantasy that I have when I'm making my art, that I'm going to inspire not only lay people, but that a scientist is going to walk up at some point and have that aha moment because they're just sort of zoning out looking at one of my paintings. Like, that's my dream. So I would pick either. I'd be happy, in either arena doing any type of science like that, any type of art that has to do with science. I would be happy as a clam. And that's why I like to bounce around. I like to keep it fresh. I don't want to pick one. I refuse.
I wish we could bottle your energy. It's
Oh,
absolutely amazing. And it's one of these things where in in professional astronomy, I so often hear these, well, we need to do these things and those things in order to get children and minorities and underserved and women doing science, and this is what we must do, and we must ask them to do these things, and by forcing them. And then what I'm hearing is it's actually no, we just need to make people curious. Full
yeah,
stop.
yeah,
Nothing else. Get
yeah,
them curious so that
yeah,
they dig their own rabbit holes.
yeah, exactly. It's just another way of engaging the public. I think that's what artists are trying to do. I think that's what good science communicators do very well, is you engage people. And that's when you're painting a painting, what's really important if you're looking at it in terms of serious art, you want your composition to be done in a way that is going to keep the viewer's eye inside the painting. So there's all these different
Yes.
little tricks that you can do so that your eye goes in a certain direction and then ends up back at a spot that then leads them back. And that's how they, famous artists have often used light as a way to do that. You draw the viewer's attention to one spot of the canvas, and scientists and science communicators, need to do those same sort of things. They
Yeah.
need to draw the attention of the viewer to whatever it is that they want them to learn.
Now,
Excuse me.
a lot of times I'll like learn this random detail and I'll be like, how the expletive have I gone so many years without anyone telling me this
Yeah,
one stupid,
yeah,
meaningful, awesome.
yeah,
What one thing made you feel betrayed about, like, for me the thing is there are baboons and penguins coexisting natively on a beach in Cape Town. No children's book prepared me for this. This is not something that, like, when they teach, if you drew that in first grade, you'd get rebuked. What is there anything that you've learned about science that you're like, this is amazing? Why did no one ever teach me this?
I honestly think that neuroscience is probably the biggest for me because I grew up in a family that had a lot of mental illness that,
Yeah.
went through the family, and there was never really any sort of rational discourse on that topic. It was sort of just ignored. And I think that when I started studying neuroscience and speaking with neuroscientists, it was this moment of like, why didn't people explain this stuff to me? Why wasn't I more familiar with the areas of the brain? Why didn't anyone let me know that, these are things that could be fixed and that life
Yeah.
can be better for so many people.
Yeah.
And it's one of the things that I hope is destigmatized in our society, is mental illness. And I think neuroscience is definitely one of the avenues to do that. And I wish that
Yeah.
school had taught me more about that. I've definitely felt more awe and more wonder and more joy from learning about astronomy, but I think that the neurosciences is sort of the avenue that taught me more about who I am. Like
Yeah.
astronomy has definitely helped me learn my place and how insignificant I am in the universe, but neuroscience has really helped explain who I am and where I came from. So that for me, I think is the one.
And and that's really an amazing way of looking at it. I read constantly. I'm one of those people that, like, I have walked into things because I was reading while commute walking.
Okay.
And and there's sometimes that you read a book and it takes you places that you're glad you went, and then you just have to go read a stupid young adult fiction book and
Yeah. Oh
clean the
yeah.
brain palette.
Absolutely.
And a lot of times with science, I'll find myself reading earth science and just getting hopeless feelings. Friends don't let friends learn about climate change beyond a certain
Yeah.
point. Um,
Yeah. I
but
gotta
then,
move, dude, because of that. It was 117 here this summer, and just down the road it was 120 degrees. And I mean, it's the beginning of global warming. I can't. I just can't. I I
and
just
this
can't.
is when I start reading about black holes eating stuff.
Yeah, yeah, right? Because it's like, oh, it's okay. Because
Yeah,
really, we're
yeah.
all just gonna get, yeah,
And
this galaxy is gonna get sucked out by the universe and swallowed up by a giant black hole, and everything will be fine.
and the thing about astronomy is it's real, it's tangible. The human mind is capable of understanding our universe. And as we start understanding all of these different things, it's the reason the word awe and awesome exist. It's
Yeah,
the awe in awesome.
yeah,
But it's also outside of all of our day-to-day reality.
yeah,
There are times when I weep for what I hear on the BBC,
yeah,
and then I go read about star formation and how we are now learning that planets start to form within the first 10,000 years of a baby star's existence.
yeah.
And the way you put it with neuroscience really
Hits
having this
inside me.
impact,
Yeah,
but then astronomy is out there to inspire and clean the brain palette.
yeah, yeah. I also feel that way about nature too. When I do, the science work sometimes gets heavy for me when I'm
Yeah.
doing the work because it's difficult for me because I'm not a scientist. So oftentimes when I need a palette cleanser, I will just simply go and paint flowers. I won't look into it. I won't find out their aroma chemicals. I won't do anything. That's always been my whole life. Even before I was interested in science-based art, it was always just something that I love to do is paint, like a bouquet of flowers. So for me, that's
Yeah.
that's my resting place.
And you actually did a bouquet of planets. I don't know if I
Yeah.
can find it.
Yeah, I've done
Yeah.
that a couple times where I painted like a lab flask and I use that as the vase, and then I
Yeah.
paint like planets and a galaxy around it, and that becomes the bouquet of flowers. Yeah, that's a recurring theme I love to do. I just did another similar one with neurons. I know I keep bringing it up. I know this is a space podcast, but I just did a neuron tree in the same sort of way.
This is more of a science podcast. We're all
Okay.
about putting science in people's brains. And hey, you have part of the brain there.
Yeah, so I made the neurons look like they're a tree. So
It
it's
also looks like it's a haunted house decoration.
okay, cool. Yeah, they are creepy looking.
They really
You know,
are.
yeah, sometimes they're creepy, sometimes they're cute, but I make them so they look like they have eyes. I use the nucleus
Uh
so
huh.
that in the cells so that they look sort of like eyeballs so that they're eyeballing each other. But it's another little artist trick to keep your eye moving around in a circle on the page. So,
That's amazing. I So we're actually rather quickly, because talking to you we could do this for hours, I think.
oh,
And I will always let you know when I'm in Los Angeles.
yes.
Um where all we've listed Patreon, Etsy. What is the key way that people should best find you on the internet?
So if you go to surlyramics.com, it's a portal to everything that I do. Surly
Okay.
Ramics, Surlyramics,
It's underneath your
surlyramics.com.
picture on the
Okay,
screen on my screen.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a portal to all the stuff that I do. I highly recommend going to my Patreon right now if you're at all interested in supporting my work. I have a special offer for the end of the month. I'm giving away these pendants that you cannot buy anywhere. They are little miniatures of my paintings that I put under glass. And so for new pledges just for this month, and anyone who's been my patron in the past can get one, and you can pick anyone that you want. So I've got neurons, I've got astronomy ones, I've got,
The
rocket
pepper.
ships. I've got the pepper one. Yeah, there's robots. There's all kinds of really fun ones. And I'm giving these away to patients this month, as well as I'm giving away a sticker, because I give away a sticker
Yeah,
every
you
other
do that
month.
all the
And
time.
then I give away a painting every month. I got in a lot of trouble because apparently you can't use a random number generator to give stuff away on Patreon. So they locked my account. I didn't know. I guess it was like gambling or something.
Oh
They used to,
God.
you're buying in. So for every month, I've been giving away one of my paintings to
Yeah,
a patron.
yeah,
So you sign up underneath,
yeah.
and then I thought it was fair because I didn't want to insert my will upon who was winning, because I felt like I would be biased, because I'd want to pick friends, or I'd want to pick someone who
Right.
said something nice to me. But Patreon locked my account for it, and so I had to delete those posts. But they unlocked it, and the good news is I came up with a new way to give away paintings. I sort of have to play God in a sense, but I'm starting this month. I'm starting a name game where I'm going to put up the painting that I'm going to give away, and patrons can join in by naming the painting, and
Okay.
whoever comes up with the best title wins the painting. And I am going to have a few little rules, like you
Yeah.
can't win every month, just so it's
Yeah.
fair. In case there's like a genius title namer in my
Right.
Patreon group. So I'm still going to do that. So the long story short is I'm giving away pendants, I'm giving away stickers, and I'm giving away painting this month. So it's a really great month to join my little happy family. And
Yeah.
I'm like 2 points away from reaching one of my stretch goals, which is where I will start doing time lapse videos of the paintings that I'm creating. And I'm
Excellent.
very close. I'm 60% funded to starting a podcast about art. So I wanted to I want the podcast itself to be an art project. So
Yeah.
I don't want to get into too much detail, but down the road, there's more media coming from me, hopefully. So yeah, I encourage everyone to go to patreon.com. That's my
Yeah.
happy place, and you can talk to me anytime there. I'm always available to chat. And if you love the jewelry, surly.etsy.com.
And it is addicting. It is addicting.
Yeah, the jewelry's great. Yeah.
So
I'm not working on it right now very hard,
yeah.
but I'll be back. Don't worry.
So this has been absolutely amazing, and as I said, you've really been an inspiration to me, and
Ditto, babe.
I
Ditto.
hope we can find one-handed heart. I'm hoping we're so sad right
I know,
now.
so there's this television show called Baskets. I don't know if anyone watches this show. It's a fantastic show. Zach Galifianakis. There's a character on there named Martha. I don't know if anyone watches it, but I've become Martha. She has a cast on her arm throughout the entire series. There's 3 seasons. They never explain it. I somehow loved that show so much that I became that show.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Okay, so this has been amazing.
Thank you, Pamela.
You are a huge inspiration to me. And I look forward to talking with you, arting with you,
Yeah.
and just being inspiring in random rabbity holy directions together in the future.
Absolutely.
Thank you for joining and bringing
Thank you for having me.
all of your energy. Keep
Thank you.
doing what you're doing. And
You too,
everyone out there on the internet, check out her art. I'm talking to the chat box instead of the camera. That's not useful. All of you out there, go find what inspires you. Go look at all of the things that Amy has done, and then figure out what is that one thing you want to do for the rest of your life that lets you be passionately happy and learn every single day. Because that's the one message
that's
I
the key.
got
Yeah.
is you learn
Learn
every single
something
day.
new. Yeah, every day.
So all of you out there, this one's a hard one to sum up. So I'm just going to say this has been Learning Space. We are part of CosmoQuest. And we will be back next Thursday. We alternate between doing this at 9 p.m. Eastern and doing this at 1:30 Eastern so that we can hit Europe and the South Pacific Rim. So next week it will be at 12:30. That's noon 30 Central Time, 1:30 p.m. East Coast Time, and I will see you all then. And stay tuned for tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern. We'll have the Daily Space brought to you by Andres Plazas. So thank you, Amy, One-Handed Heart. And wherever you are in the world, have a fabulous morning, evening, or afternoon, and I'll see you on the other side. Bye-bye.
Thanks.